The three best-selling cameras in the world are the Canon M50, the Sony ZV-E10, and the Canon T7. They're all budget and beginner-friendly cameras, but which one is the best? Well, it really depends on what you specifically need it for. If you're just shooting photos versus someone that wants to do photos, videos, and vlogging, the right camera for each of these people is going to be very different. But each of these cameras has a unique X factor that makes it the perfect camera for a specific type of shooter. So I tested out each of these cameras, saw the pros and the cons, and in this video I want to help you figure out which is the best camera for you and which you specifically need it for. So let's get right into it. Each of these cameras are small and compact and very easy to treat as your everyday carry camera. But each of these cameras has a unique design for the specific type of shooter that it's meant for. So depending on if you're shooting photos, videos, or a little bit of both, you're going to want to pick a different camera. The Canon T7 has an old school DSLR feel and it's meant to give you a pure photography experience. The T7 has a nice deep grip and a really robust feeling in your hands that makes it a pleasure to shoot with. The menu and button layout is really simple and you can pretty much pick this camera and figure it out right away. It also has a pop-up flash for photography, which is really rare because you don't really see it as much on modern cameras. However, the screen on the back is fixed, so it's not a tilt screen at all, and it also does not have an input for audio. And the lenses that this camera uses are the typical Canon EF lenses, which are really affordable. There's a huge variety of them, and you can even pick them up secondhand at a really good price. The Canon M50, however, is meant for both photos and video. It's actually smaller than the Canon T7, but it has a pretty similar menu and button layout, so it's really easy to just pick up and get a handle of. And the Canon M50 also has a side articulating screen, so not only does it work as a tilt screen for high angle and low angle shots, but you can also flip it over to the front for self-recording and you can see yourself. And it also has an input for external audio mics. Best of all, the tilt screen is also touch sensitive. You can actually control the camera entirely through the touchscreen and it's pretty similar to a smartphone. And the tilt screen also has touch autofocus. You can simply tap something on the back screen and the autofocus will automatically pull focus to that object. The Canon M50 uses the older EOS M line of lenses, which are pretty big in terms of selection, and they're also very affordable and easy to buy secondhand. Now, the Sony ZV-E10 is the most different in terms of design, and it's also the most unique. It has a very bare bones and simple design meant to keep it easy and simple to use. It only has one button to switch between photo, video, and slow motion, so there's no complicated mode dials. Now, the menus on the ZV-E10 are pretty dense and there's pages and pages of them, but that's okay because the ZV-E10 is really meant for someone that wants to go in and customize every little setting on their camera, and it's really meant to be a camera that you can go deep with and nerd out. Instead of a pop-up flash, the ZV-E10 actually has a 3-capsule microphone built right in, which gives you amazing audio without needing an external microphone. This helps keep your camera small and nimble, and this way, if you're a vlogger, you don't need to carry around a bulky microphone with you at all times. The ZV-E10 does have a side articulating screen just like the Canon M50, and it also has an audio input if you do want to use external microphones. However, the tilt screen's touch functionality is not as robust. You can only use it for autofocus and touch shutter. One thing I love about the Sony ZV-E10 is that it has a ton of lenses available for it. You can pretty much use any Sony lens with the ZV-E10, and Sony is pretty much making a new lens every 2 weeks, so whatever kind of lens you want, Sony probably has it. But what's inside the camera is what really matters, because each of these cameras look and produce very different quality photos and videos, which is surprising because all of these cameras have a 24 megapixel APS-C size sensor, but because of how the camera's processor works, the images each of these cameras produce is very different. The Canon T7 and most Canon cameras have amazing colors. Everything is warm and saturated, especially when it comes to faces and skin tone, and people always look their best with Canon cameras. The Canon T7 can shoot photos at 3 frames per second, which is pretty slow, but it's perfect for casual, slow-moving shots like landscapes, portraits, or small family get-togethers. It's pretty much good at anything that's not fast-moving, so no sports or wildlife. And you also have to shoot using the optical viewfinder because the autofocus is pretty slow if you use the LCD screen, and it's probably going to work the best if you use the optical viewfinder. But the Canon T7 also has 14-bit RAW in terms of photos, so if you're so inclined, you can really edit the heck out of your photos, and you'll get a ton of flexibility both in terms of colors and light values. Now, the Canon T7 does shoot video, but only at full HD at 24 and 30 frames per second, which is great for grabbing a quick clip here and there, but it lacks any kind of serious slow motion options, and it does not have 4K, and in case you forgot, it also does not have an input for an external microphone. So it's really a good camera for catching quick clips here and there, but not really serious video stuff. Now, the Canon M50 and the Sony ZV-E10 are much better and faster when it comes to photos and videos and produce a much higher quality results. But of course, one camera is better than the other. The Canon M50 again has those gorgeous Canon colors where everything just looks warm and saturated and skin tones look amazing right out of camera. The Canon M50 shoots at 10 frames per second with amazing autofocus in both photo and video mode. So you can shoot fast-moving stuff like sports, wildlife with absolute ease, and the autofocus will absolutely keep up. But it's still good for slower moving shots like portraits and landscapes, and again, you have 14-bit RAW, so you can do anything with your photos that your heart desires as long as you know how to edit properly. In video mode, the Canon M50 shoots at full HD at 24 and 30 frames per second for real-time video, and 60 frames per second for 2x slow motion, and 120 frames per second for 5x slow motion, but it only shoots 120 frames per second at 720p, which is pretty low res considering how good other cameras are out there now. Now, the Canon M50 does shoot 4K video, but with a few compromises. It actually zooms into your image by cropping the sensor, and because you're throwing away almost half your sensor, the quality of the video is greatly reduced, and also, because it's so cropped in, it's hard to get a wide shot in 4K video. I wouldn't really consider the Canon M50 a 4K camera. The 4K is like a side feature that you can use here and there, but it's not a camera that I would mainly shoot in 4K. The Sony ZV-E10, however, will absolutely blow you away both in terms of photos and video. It shoots 10 frames per second in photo mode just like the Canon M50, and the colors are a bit flatter, but Sony knows this and they've actually added a few features in this camera so you can dial in the exact look that you want with your photos and videos. The unique thing about the sensor in the Sony ZV-E10 is that it's actually amazing at low light. So if you're at a dim party or shooting streets at nighttime, you're always going to get a crisp and clean image even at high ISOs. But the Sony ZV-E10 does not have a pop-up flash for photography. And of course, it has 14-bit RAW, but Sony has a unique version of RAW that actually gives you a lot more flexibility in terms of color and light value, and you can really push this RAW file a lot more than the Canon M50 and the Canon T7. In video mode, the ZV-E10 shoots 4K at 24 and 30 frames per second without any kind of cropping or compromises, and I would definitely consider the ZV-E10 a 4K camera. But best of all, the 4K is actually downsampled from 6K, so you really get the detail and clarity of 6K in your 4K image, and you might as well treat it like a 6K camera. And the ZV-E10 has amazing slow motion options. In full HD, you can shoot at 60 frames per second and 120 frames per second, making it the best camera on this list in terms of frame rates and resolution. And like I mentioned earlier, they also added something so you can easily adjust your colors. The Sony ZV-E10 actually has log profiles and cinema profiles built right into the camera, and they give you more dynamic range and more flexibility with your colors when it comes to editing. And you can even go in and tweak every little cinema profile, adjust saturation, contrast, and really dial in the perfect look for yourself. And using cinema and log profiles, you're simply going to get better colors and more dynamic range, which is something the Canon T7 and the Canon M50 do not have. The ZV-E10 is a much better fit for someone who wants an entry-level budget camera, but you also want to go in and tinker with every little setting and really nerd out. So let's answer the big question. Which of these cameras is right for you based on what it can do? And what is the unique selling factor that makes each of these cameras one of the best-selling cameras in the world? The Canon T7 is perfect for someone that wants a pure photography experience, but I wouldn't really recommend it for video. I love the feel of like an old school DSLR in my hands, and it's really a satisfying camera to use. The photos from this camera look amazing, and if you edit them, you can honestly deliver stunning professional level results. And one of the things that I love about the Canon T7 is the fact that it's only $399. In terms of cameras, it's actually one of the most affordable cameras you can get right now. The Canon M50 kind of sits in the middle. It's a good casual camera, but it can also be a great camera for someone that wants to do more serious photography and video. The main selling point of the Canon M50 is really how easy it is to use. With the touchscreen, the touch autofocus, the simple design, it's a really easy camera to just pick up and get great results with. The ZV-E10 is really a camera I recommend to the nerds and people who want to dive deep into their camera and tinker with every little setting. and the fact that you get Sony RAW and cinema profiles in this camera, the sky is the limit with what you can achieve, and you're also staying on budget. So no matter what kind of photos and videos you're making, one of these cameras is without a doubt going to be a great fit for you as long as you pick the right camera for you.